we are here today with the very interesting topic about the innovation between startups and corporates in cyberspace. And I'm really glad that we have four fabulous speakers or four fabulous persons to tell us a little bit more about this area. And first, I would like to give over to you one by one and ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself very shortly, your role maybe, and how did you end in a cyberspace. And can I start with you, Laila?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Rupi. My name is Laila Aganovic. I am head of venture engagement in Logitech. I joined the firm a couple of months ago, especially because of the topic that we are discussing today, how to better interact with the startups. Logitech is taking that very seriously because we think that we had a great history until now and we want to do even better after. And the innovation ecosystem is really dear to us. And the cybersecurity has been with me since my studies because I finished the EPFL as an engineer in communication systems, and my major was in cybersecurity and security of networks. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Sandra, can I give over to you?
Of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Sandra. I'm CEO of the cybersecurity company Future-A. So we are a typical trajectory of a local security company coming originally from ETH backgrounds, have then moved into the market, and we have been around for 5 years now. Myself, I've been in IT for the last 15 years. I worked in various roles, also a lot in security projects on a global scale. This is where I kind of got first to know that usability and security is really not taken care of when designing new products. And this is a bit what we're focusing on at Future-A. So we really want to make user interaction seamless for customer-facing applications because security can embed seamlessly. And so that's what we do with our authentication and transaction signing platform.
Thanks, Sandra. Carola.
Thanks. So I'm Carola. I'm the COO of Exeon. So similar to Futura, we are a spin-off of ETH Zurich, also 5 years old. So I think we have a lot of similar experiences in this part. In my role as a COO, I was the first one to join Exeon with a business background and not a technical one. And I'm now responsible to actually scale up this business side. So I'm talking a lot to larger corporates and also engaging in a lot of joint projects.
Thanks a lot, Carola. And Thomas from the corporate world.
Yes, hello everybody. I'm Thomas Holdreger. I'm the global head of security IT at UBS. My teams are spread globally and they build all technology-based controls around cybersecurity, identity and access management, as well as data protection from DLP and digital rights management and more for the bank. We've been interacting regularly and several times with startups. We are regularly also visiting specific regions, especially Israel, to look at cyber startups, and we find it very exciting to work with them. Have also done that in the past with some, and I'm really glad to be a participant in this conversation here. Thanks for having me, VP.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. So let me start with the first question to all of you and ask. It's a very basic one. How do startups meet the corporate? So how do they get the connection to their potential clients? Sandra, maybe you can start.
Sure. In my view, the most effective way is really through a network. So typically having an access, a warm intro through someone that you already know, who knows you, or even referrals with customers that are happy, that open doors to peer organizations, is definitely the most effective. I would say maybe to a lesser extent, events, most probably, because it's really a big coincidence that you find the right interface on the corporate side or someone who really is eager to push things forward. So I would say from a success rate, I would go with this priority.
Carola, do you have same experiences?
Yes, very same experiences. I think, yeah, warm introductions are very valuable. Events can also help a lot if it's really a very specific event where you meet the right people and the right stakeholders. However, yeah, often as Sandra said, it's a bit a very indirect approach, so that you meet someone from another team that then has to introduce you to the right team. So yeah, very similar approach here.
Laila, you are in between corporate and startup, so maybe you can also tell a little bit about your experiences in this.
You know, what's fun is that I completely agree with Sandra and Carola. But this is when it's obvious, when you know what the corporate is doing on the other side. Now that I joined Logitech and that we are working on so many crazy projects, I would say, which are super interesting and are paving the way for the future of the company. We are now very much active in some of the areas where you wouldn't expect Logitech actually to be. So what I've been doing lately a lot is reaching out to some of the companies, and their first reaction is, okay, cool, Logitech, why are they even contacting me? And then when we start exchanging, and when you see that mutual interest, it unlocks, I would say, really unexpected potential from both sides. And this is where we had, for the time being, the best relationships, really.
And Thomas, being on the corporate side and probably getting bombarded with a lot of good ideas, how do you really get the right ideas to come to your area?
So just to give you an impression, right? I receive per day, and that's not even looking at those which keep stuck in my spam filter. I'm receiving about 50 to 100 vendor contact emails per day. I am being regularly called by event organizers. So my policy is very simple. I do not attend events. I just don't. It's a waste of time. What we are doing is, when we have a problem, we're looking at the market proactively. We have people we are interacting with. That may be consulting companies. It may be, similar peers at other companies where exchange thoughts, whether they have seen somebody doing something interesting. Or what we also do, we are visiting regions. So as I've stated, Israel, the last few years, except last year due to COVID, we've always spent in January a week there. Yes, it was the week when the conference took place there, the Cybertech Tel Aviv, but we didn't attend the conference. We just were there because we knew that many people are in town, and then reached out to companies we wanted to see and got their CTOs in, because we're not interested in marketing slides. We're not interested to talk to salespeople. That is also a loss of time. We really just want to talk to the techies, to the CTOs, to the people who have designed the product, who know how it works, who know how challenging it is to integrate it. And then we're either interested and we go and test it and POC it, or we don't. These decisions are usually made quite quickly. That's usually how that process works with us.
Thanks, Thomas. Sandra, Carola, when you hear the statement that Thomas just made, how does it reflect to you as a startup, as people who really want to promote their product and try to find the right people in the corporate world?
I think, yeah, it completely makes sense. I mean, also for us, I understand that Thomas has a crazy inbox, and also for us, I mean, we are very interested to talk relatively directly and openly about the technology. So also what we are doing, as we are active in a very technical way, and our main stakeholders are often CISOs, head network security, and so on. So we never have a session with only marketing slides. We always also show demos to come up to the point. So we understand very much that our stakeholders have a limited time frame. The only thing which I personally find a little bit sad that Thomas's remark is that he goes to Israel and doesn't look on the Swiss cyber environment. So, but otherwise, completely subscribe.
I do that as well, of course, just not systematically during a specific week, but we are engaged also with an ETH startup and implementing their technology, that's Xeon. So this is not limited to a certain market, but obviously we all know that Israel is just a very hot area, very hot location for cyber startups, and that's why we go there. But point taken, Carola. I will look more here as well.
Well, maybe to add, for me, I also noticed it's very difficult to reach out to stakeholders in Switzerland because they rather go to Stanford environments, to the Bay Area or to Beersheba in Israel to really scout security, than looking at what is very close by. So that's why I have initiated this so-called cybersecurity startup map to at least do an inventory of all the local initiatives that are happening in product innovation. And it has proven to be fairly working, and I get a lot of good resonance. Still, we are not yet there. I think there still needs to happen a lot more systematic ways that decision takers can meet, because I can just talk for ourselves, but also a bit what I see around myself. It's very difficult to get meetings, even in the home country. And if you want to see success stories out of Switzerland, it just has to become easier, and feedback loops have to be more efficient. It cannot be that companies take forever, especially in the early days, to validate the market. It cannot be that it takes so long to reach decision takers. And again, we talk about high-profile quality researchers coming out of ETH, not some people that just try out some prototype. Like that's something I would wish we could become better in.
If I may just add one thing, ETH go, but EPFL as well.
Sorry, I in general for our system is very high. It's not
just in general. There is one thing that I would like to say, and I'm saying that as a venture capitalist. We are very often underestimating the ecosystem that we have here. We always think that grass is greener on the other side. And Thomas, I agree. Cybersecurity in Israel is excellent, but definitely so it is here. And you would be super surprised if you gave those guys a little bit of a chance. What they have in Israel, what we don't, is people who are going to give them tickets of 5, 10. So they're going to be raising that 15 million round, even in Series A. Here, it's a nightmare for them to get there.
Thank you for touching this point. Yes, absolutely. Like, we would have had such an easier start if we were based in the US. 100% about that. For us, it was a purpose decision. We wanted to build a European company because that makes us proud. Also, data privacy related, we have very different understanding of how we want to build a product. But it would have been way easier. Like, we compare direct competitors that have like 20x investments right from seed level, where you can really compare very much the level of a prototype or the team composition, etc. And already this is a very different start if you start in a place like here. If you then have more struggles to build a home market, it's like double penalizing just the wrong location where you basically start a company. And this is a bit what I really try to fight for: better framework conditions, and for also proud industry, and to reach out to talents that comes out right out of our doorsteps.
But that's where also I think corporates could help a lot, because what is super difficult is to sign those first POCs that are significant, to get to know the technology, to kind of get the whole story off the ground. And I think looking at the number of large corporations, but also of small to medium corporates that we have, there is enough material here to create that close collaboration with startups and SMEs. There's just a lot of education that is, I think, needed at the beginning to kind of act as a translator for that. And there's maybe one thing. There's a really good book of my former colleague in Swisscom Ventures that came out, called The Deep Tech Nation. It's written by Dominique Maigret. I would really recommend it, just to have that history of where Switzerland is in terms of innovation and what real potential we have, actually. Just as a reminder, sometimes it's good.
So I think what Sandra said is really important as well, because it is almost a bit the chicken and egg problem, right? Because I can really from a large enterprise company give you a bit of insight what the real challenge is of working with startups. And the challenge is not the trust in the product or the trust in the quality of the product or doing a POC. The challenge is, especially in the security space, how do you ensure that you get the right support levels, that you get the right responsiveness, etc. If you really want to globally use a product, for example, an authentication product, guess you have an outage, something doesn't work, but it's currently 2 a.m. in Switzerland and the people in APAC can't log in the morning, and you don't reach the vendor to provide you support with the with the technology which just has a production instance. So enterprise readiness is something which is very hard to achieve in large, complicated, very heterogeneous environments and infrastructures and platforms as the one we have, for example. And it is very hard to really achieve a rollout then ultimately, unless you have a certain size, unless you can provide a certain level of support. And that is extremely difficult to achieve if you haven't gone through the investment rounds, which Sandra has mentioned previously, and could actually ramp up and staff accordingly. And that's why I say it's a bit the chicken and egg problem. I wouldn't say it's a trust issue. I would say ultimately it's a capability issue where, at some point, and that's really what you just said, Sandra, startups in the US or in Israel may just find somebody who also trusts and then just, throws in 100 million or whatever. And that ecosystem, that support levels, etc., can be ramped up accordingly. And then the large enterprises, get the trust also around the enterprise readiness of the product, not about the people, not about the technology, but about those things surrounding it. Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you, Thomas. And nevertheless, even the large unicorns in security from the US and Israel started somewhere. So they had also their first customers that required 24/7 support, and it was not there, or maybe just to a certain extent. So it's really, I think, we have now at Vivexion and Future A, you have two examples here that have been way over this threshold of initial proof, and we have global operations as companies. Even for those, it's difficult. It's not just for the early stage. The early stage, I think, are struggling most because time is really crucial in this area. So you need to raise maybe comparatively even more money, because sales cycles are, compared to if you do a social media platform, way longer because of this due diligence, because of the security audits, you have compliance, onboarding, and all of those pieces, which is perfectly fine. This is the nature of security, right? But I'm just saying, comparatively, that's why for the security companies, it's even tougher these initial days. That's why it's important to have maybe some early, proud, brave movers, because in the US, they're also there. And it's not just that the funding is better as an ecosystem, but really
I agree with you.
The market is jumping on things that comes out of
Yes.
of Stanford, I'm sorry, because
I agree.
they trust it and they want to build it together with the companies, because if you're early, you have maybe the chance to influence the product, to make it even more specific to your needs, and to build, worst case, they go bankrupt, and you have talent you can hire that you might have not had access to. And this is, I think, a bit where we miss the train. And specifically in security, this is so dear to me. I think we have a big chance for Switzerland to have a really strong location and brand as well. And this is valuable for the whole economy as such, if you build.
Would it be valuable if actors like Digital Switzerland or others would invest more into, you mentioned the cyber startup map which you created, like creating regular forum meetings or something with CISO stakeholders, senior engineers from companies or startups could come and present and pitch for POCs or whatever. Would that be helpful, or would that be no? We don't need that. That's a bit it's a bit too formal. How could in Switzerland be an environment created where there is more information exchange around that? Is that a formal thing which needs to change? Is that just networking which needs to adapt? What would be your ideas on what to do?
Maybe Carola can also chip in when there's something to add. But maybe one thing that I noticed is oftentimes on C-level or high up in the industry, people are very much aware of this, and they really much push, and they're attending events, and they're trying to buy in on the local ecosystem and help. And CISOs as well. So a lot of CISOs are really motivated and want to push things. But then where oftentimes it struggles to pass through is in between, because the awareness is just not there, and totally understandable, things are overloaded. Maybe it's also not in their goals for the year. It's just something that they try to push away. And so when some fancy technology comes from Silicon Valley, it's just like it has kind of a proof, or from Israel, it has a proof, okay, this is a big thing. So then people are more likely to push things through than maybe something which is at first sight not so appealing because it's already here. That's a bit an experience that I see in various companies, like what in other startups as well, that they face the same topics.
Carola, what would you say?
So yeah, I mean, maybe two things. So Thomas, on what you said, I think it could be very helpful to have really cybersecurity specific events, because especially when we started in the early years, we attended also a lot of those accelerators, and the issue of all those events was that basically there were quite interesting companies, very interested people, but they put the whole tech umbrella onto it, and sometimes even biotech companies were at the same event, so it was very not specific, and so mostly the people or the outcomes of those accelerators were quite difficult. I'm sorry, the video is somehow strange. I appear to have some issues, and then so I think such events could be very helpful. However, only
I think we lost her in the event.
If I can maybe just complete on one thing to what Sandra was saying before. It's also a lot about education on security inside of the companies. We've done a tremendous effort now in Logitech to really make sure that all the teams were aware of what we were doing, how we were implementing security at every single level. So, and also what were the parts that they needed to be aware of and attentive to, so that everyone can kind of also contribute to that. So whenever they would be exposed to new technologies, they could see also on their own how this could be impactful and helpful to us, so that this, once a new technology comes or is presented to them, so that they're much more receptive. So I think that there is also a little bit of that has to be done on our level for this communication, again, to be much more, I would say, fluid. I don't know how you guys see that in the startups.
yeah, this would definitely help to have awareness, and again, maybe even incentivization across the organization to constantly rethink the infrastructure. How can you be better? What could be technologies to onboard? I totally understand with operational responsibilities, it's very difficult to do because typically everyone is already totally overboarded with day-to-day work. So it really needs to also happen that there is an environment where those like fresh thoughts and objectivization on the whole situation, which also maybe gets to innovation, can happen. And that's a big struggle, I think, that many organizations face as well.
Sandra, you were talking about the innovation, and what is your experience with the innovation labs from large corporates? And let me give the first to Thomas because he needs to leave in 5 minutes. So, what is your view of the innovation lab in large corporate and how those could be leveraged to help of the startup companies that they can really bring their ideas in?
Innovation labs it's very hard to say because I don't believe that the companies have a unified approach on how they operate them, right? Some may have an innovation lab, some may not. We have a small one here and a small one there, but really systematic approach on how companies do R&D and have innovation labs does, in my experience, not exist, right? And then, in these labs, the only thing you can really achieve is like a high level impression or a high level idea how the product works, while the real devil is in the detail, right? How does the rollout really work? How complicated is it to achieve a reasonable coverage, especially with security products? They're very often agent-based or network monitoring-based, or often these labs give you nothing else than just a general idea on what the product is, and unfortunately, it is really only the POCs conducted by the specific teams who need to solve a problem, which will really give the insight the company needs to make a purchase decision. So certainly an idea to try and go and pitch for that, but there are few companies who are just randomly POCing stuff in labs. They always are focused, look at problems they currently have, and then POC products they believe would fit. So in my experience, that's the case. I don't know, is that in line with what you're doing at Logitech, for example, Laila, or the experience you have made so far, Sandra and Carola, or is that just US specific? What I just summarized?
So maybe Laila.
No, just go on, please, Carola.
Maybe from the startup side, I agree. I think the issue with innovation labs is also that, or let me start differently. So we are active in a highly specialized area, and we have a highly specialized tool which we developed and which we are obviously, in order to scale, we also have to a certain extent rely on standardization. And in innovation labs, the expectation is often, so we have this problem and you solve it for us somehow, but not. It's a little bit, the startup is the innovative driver, but as Thomas said, it's much more interesting, I think, for the corporate and also for the startup to join together and solve real world problem without without from the corporate side pivoting a lot, and without from basically having the impression that the startup then customizes everything around the innovation lab needs from the corporate.
Yeah, and let me make a polemic comment, right? Often the innovation labs are run by CTO teams or people who have time to look at R&D and do some research, and then they identify a nice product. But really into the company to buy and go and do, you make it only if the people are POC who really own that technology, who own the problem, who are responsible to do something about it, know the complexity of rolling it out. It's almost like, you play around with people in the company who also ultimately anyways don't decide whether something happens then with the product being POC'd in their lab or not.
As you said it, Thomas, you need a buy-in from someone who is basically going to use it. Because the trick of what you said before between the labs who are more or less a kind of an independent environment where you can very much test things and you have budgets for testing, but after the real kick for the startup is really to see their own participation into a new product line or into a new solution. And that's where the acknowledgement comes with. And this is a real reference for the company to be able to raise a new round and use those customers as a real tangible reference. This is where they have to go. And it takes time to build such relationships, because at the end of the day, big corporates are always afraid of that little tiny company, and you're asking yourself if the company is going to be surviving in the next 3 months. But I think that this is also, again, a way of knowing each other that kind of also lowers those apprehensions, and establishing that communication and be able to make that leap of faith. It's super important.
Mm-hmm.
Apologies. Sorry, Sandra, to interrupt. I unfortunately have to leave. I'm really sorry about that. There is a meeting I could not avoid from joining. I would really prefer continuing the discussion here, but I have to step out. Thank you very much. It has been a pleasure to meet you all. And
Hi, Thomas.
have a great
Thomas.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Thomas. And I think we still have 10 minutes that I can grill you ladies also a little bit, because you now that the big corporate is away, I think there is also some strategies, I think, how to survive the first or the next 3 months. Reading books like Startup Nation Israel, telling about the ideas and why they have so many startups. In that book, it's also given that Switzerland is actually the number 2 in a lot of innovation and really getting the innovation going forward. So what would be the strategies that you see for the startups to really go over the hurdle and get that mindset away from the people that only one of the 10 startups survives or something like that? So how do you convince to get the ideas forward?
I mean, first and foremost, I would like to shed some light into the real data. And I have just the EPFL Zurich data, so apologies for that. But like when I always get this question, like, will the company still be there, specifically in security, in 5 years? And when you look at the data of the spin-offs in information security, actually 93% of all the companies are still around after 5 years. So we talk a really high success rate. So this is already certain. And I'm not saying, again, EPFL and ETH is the best. There are a lot of other amazing companies that come out in Switzerland right out of industry itself that see a problem and solve it. So there's a lot more. But it shows that this is a really wrong connotation that we have hyper scale companies and 1 out of 10 will make it. I think in Switzerland, we have a lot B2B companies that are, again, targeting corporations. So most of the companies are going international directly because the home market is too small. So it's anyways a very different sort of business. And in my view, it's a very wrong perception of startups in general that many people have in Switzerland, because either you're in this little bubble of entrepreneurs, or you have these ideas that come from social network or TV shows or things like that. But it's like the reality is somewhere very much in between. And I think it's really important also to get a better understanding, that the general society gets a better understanding what it really means to build a company, and that we invest in the future of jobs in Switzerland and of wealth in Switzerland by innovating and keeping also IP in Switzerland and prosperity at the end. And I think this is really goes way even beyond just security problems.
I mean, I completely agree. I think maybe also the Swiss way, which sometimes is a hurdle for a startup, so that everyone is a little bit conservative, risk averse, very cautious, is in that sense also a positive thing, because if someone found the startup really sure about the product and about themselves and the idea. So I think that could then be already quite, yeah, that's then already a first proof point. I'm not sure can you still hear me?
You blinking sometimes. Your cameras.
I can hear you
Okay,
still.
it's really I'm not sure what's happening with my computer today. Yeah, so I think that's already.
Now you freeze.
Maybe from a venture capitalist perspective, one thing that I noticed, and again, I've been at DPFL, and we were not taught how to think in a cash flow perspective. We were not taught to manage a company, and it's a different story from having a very good technology and a very good idea to scale it to something that is a good product that can be marketable, that the customers can understand easily, can implement easily, and that can be scaled. But I've seen a really tremendous effort in the community, startup community in Switzerland during the last years to basically really improve that level of how to manage those little startups. So when I hear people that this is like throwing darts on investing in companies is like throwing darts on the board because you never know which one is going to go up or not. I would disagree with that because I think that it's really also again about trying to understand who is on the other side of the table. Is that person only a techie, or is that person also the real manager who's going to be building that business? And this is also something that comes with the maturation of the ecosystem. And I think that the Swiss ecosystem is really getting a lot of traction there and improving a lot lately.
Absolutely. Still, it needs a lot more in the sense, for instance, we talked about venture capital before. If you are in other places, you might find serial entrepreneurs that had a successful exit in a SaaS security company. So this is not just money that they would reinvest in the ecosystem, but it's like a lot of know-how and like learnings and failure and things they overcome in the past. And we just don't have this virtuous cycle yet because there's not a critical mass of, or like, let's be honest, a handful of exits maybe in Switzerland in security. This is one, and it also goes for talent in general, like to find very specific, we're now in a growth stage across the globe. And so to find talent that have done product marketing, that have done customer success, like ideally, again, in a security company or in any similar context, doesn't even have to be security. It's really difficult then in ecosystems where there's like hundreds of companies, some exit, some go bust, and you just have a pool of talent that it's not a lot easier to hire. I think it's everywhere a war on talent, but at least there is a pool with people that have done this before.
But that comes back to what Thomas was saying before. I mean, what is needed here? An ecosystem is needed. Really, somewhere where you would have interest to remain here. It's again that talent retention. We are very good at building talents, but then after, if that talent is not amused by higher challenges, they tend to leave Switzerland. And I think when I was even thinking of investments, for example, if you take pension funds or people like these, I think that these are the right people also to invest in this country, because at the end of the day, this is going to be creating really that ecosystem of a value add workplaces that are going to be sustaining this new economy. And I think that this could be really powerful for Switzerland over the long term. But again, if people don't communicate, it's difficult.
Absolutely agree.
And I think it's also, I mean, on the war for talents, it's also quite difficult to compete on the technical side against Google or Amazon, who can pay very high salaries for people, for very talented people coming out of ETH or EPFL or other universities. So I think that's I think Zurich is a very cool place to be, given that we have the ETH next door, but it also is a challenging place to be, given that we have also the Google next door.
Absolutely,
So-
Carola, you're also mentioning an important point. And for all these reasons, right now, if you're objective, it's a really bad place to start a security company still. And this is an issue, and this should be an alert for everyone in the industry, because you want to be an attractive location to have security companies. They should thrive around you, because that, again, gives this ecosystem a chance to grow.
Many thanks. We are almost at the end, and let me give you one more round, just the final words before we have to close the session. You said that we need to have something more in Switzerland, and just being in a place, if having the two great technical universities, the very world-renowned universities here, is one thing. And the other thing was that we would have to have the means to really promote the talent and promote those new startup ideas. Do we need to start this by, what would be your idea? What should we do? What can we do as a bunch of people to start promoting this?
So I would definitely say talking more about success stories. So also give honest stories, how it really is to build a company in Switzerland is important to share, to create awareness. Building maybe more catered events, maybe small events, but with the really right people, that would definitely help. So areas, platforms to meet. Again, not large public events where people just consume it as entertainment, but really where there is a meaningful intent to jointly find collaborations, giving more straightforward feedback. That's another thing. It's a cultural thing in Switzerland. I think also it's important that if a company, individuals, representatives do not consider to do something, that they feed it back instantly and don't try to kind of sugarcoat and keep on discussions, that the early stage companies can focus on the ones that are promising, the collaborations that are promising. And last but not least, like really, let's all be a bit proud of what's happening locally, and and we should really invest in future jobs. And I think we have there now still a little window of opportunity, but it eventually might close because people are just not willing to invest into companies in Switzerland anymore, but they rather start right away somewhere else.
Yeah, I think difficult to add anything there, but maybe also, yeah, take startups seriously. Don't use it to appear somehow innovative, but really use it to evaluate their or our offering and really look into it, instead of maybe traveling once less to Israel and going once more to Zurich, Lausanne, or do everything jointly, because so large so Switzerland is quite small.
On my side, one thing that I find really interesting now is that we are creating those specific accelerators. For example, in Lausanne here, we have the Biopole that is going to be much more on biotechnologies and healthcare, medtech oriented. So this is one thing. We're going to have a cyber campus that is launched also on with one of the big partners like SIGPA. We have the Trust Valley that is also about the economy of trust. So all those little specialized poles are there to create those micro kind of societies where people can exchange with the big corporates who are targeting their own verticals. And I think that this is also about sharing experience and learning what is expected from one side from the big corporates, and on the other side, the learning from peers in the startup ecosystem. And I would even more add to what Sandra said before. I would prefer people to talk more about the hiccups. What didn't work? Why did I fail? Because I have the impression that in Switzerland, fail once, fail twice, and people are like, no, you know what? I'm gonna go for that big corporate job. I'm not gonna take any risk anymore. And failing is okay. you're learning. And this is how we are going to only be able to make those growth companies and make those people, again, who exited those companies be excited to stay there. Because frankly speaking, in the top 15 universities worldwide, technically speaking, we have the chance of having 2 of them in such a small country. That means that we managed to attract worldwide, brains in this little country. Let's make everything we can to retain them. And so that all those scientists also become the new idea generators for those new companies. But then we also have the big corporates who can invest, who can participate in the creation of those business models. All the ingredients are there. Now we just have to package that and make sure that people exchange. And I know that this is very often the most difficult thing. I know it sounds really naive, but it really is the case. People just don't exchange.
I would really sign that, and I'm unfortunate we are at the end of our time. I would invite everyone to move to the main stage with for Chelsea Slack presentation. And ladies, thanks a lot joining us today. I really look forward to meet you in person at some time.
Okay.
And thanks a lot for your time and your collaboration and everything that you gave today to the audience as well.
Thanks, Virpi.
Hey.
Thank you very much, Virpi.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye.